Welcome into the I-80 Boys preview show tonight. I am one of the co-hosts on this show, Chris Baca. This big son of a bitch to my left is...
Well, I've been called a lot of names over the years, but, I've probably heard a lot worse from you here recently, Chris. But you can call me old C. Hunt, a.k.a. part-time podcast host.
I love it. I love it, man. Christian, what's good, man? What do you know? How you doing?
Man, not too much. I mean, it was a great week and a half of football. Very interesting week and a half of football. Whoever took the Aaron Rodgers Jets career lasting 4 snaps, you were right on, because I did not see that happening.
Hey, I saw a tweet today on Facebook that some guy predicted that, said it in a tweet 2 hours before the game started. He goes, watch Aaron Rodgers tear his Achilles on like the 5th play of the game on that turf. Oh shit, dude, it happened. Isn't that crazy?
That is, that's one of those hard things that, like, we come out with some wild predictions every so often, but again, something like that, I mean, that's certainly never hope that on anybody, but that's very, very tough to predict, especially the injury itself too. I mean, that's
season ending too, man. I feel bad for Jets fans. Even though in my Dolphins division, I don't wish good upon any of those teams, Bills included. But you never want to see that, though, man. It's just that sucks.
Oh yeah. Well, Chris, let's kind of jump right into it here. For our preview show, our first game of the week here: Penn State versus Illinois. Chris, what do you think about Penn State in this one?
I'll tell you what, Christian, I'll run down a little stats here. I'm very high on Penn State. I have been, in the preseason. I think this is probably their year personally. I know probably the Penn State man saying, well, everybody's been saying that for the last, 10 years with James Franklin. But Penn State, they're off to a decent start. I think they've done kind of what they need to with the 2-0 start. They beat West Virginia. Looked a little shaky in the first half, I think, of that game, Christian. But they end up winning that one 38-15. Week 2. Did what they needed to do against a middle school elementary team in Delaware, 63-7. They played a lot of second and third stringers. I mean, which is obvious, and that's what they're supposed to do when you're Penn State. But the big thing here is like what I've noticed so far with Penn State. The play of Drew Aller, right? I mean, he's looked great. I think finally we've talked about this, that they look like they finally got a real good quarterback back there. He was highly recruited. He's 43, I think, of 55 so far this year, 529 yards, 4 TDs, and no turnovers. That's huge. You don't typically see that the last couple of years out of a Penn State quarterback. Usually it's been ground and pound, rely on that defense. This year, obviously, we know about the 2 running backs, right? Keatron Allen, Nick Singleton. These guys got like almost 300 yards, I think, between them, 5 touchdowns. They're doing what they need to do on the ground. The big thing here, though, is Penn State's defense, Christian, in this game. I think they're 12th in the country right now in yards, given up per game, right around 225. Very impressive. But again, begs the question, okay, you guys really haven't played anybody. We're going to find out against this Illinois team. Illinois loves to run the ball. We know that, and I'm going to let you dig into Illinois here in a second. But going into this, Christian, I look at Penn State, and I'm high on them. I think they're 14.5-point favorites in Champaign. What's your thoughts on Illinois here? I mean, we know what they didn't do last week. Break that down for me, if you would, sir.
Yeah, so, my thoughts on Illinois, Chris, I mean, they're coming off 2 really disappointing performances, I feel like. I mean, they almost lost to Toledo. That was a close game right there in and of its own right. And, I mean, they got beat by Kansas last week. I mean, I get it. Kansas is, it's not the Kansas of old times, right? That's a meme, but still – for what we thought Illinois was going to be coming into this year, still a really disappointing way to lose there. Illinois gave up 262 yards rushing to Kansas. And I can only imagine what Penn State's going to be able to do in this one, right? That's surprising. dude, for me, because Illinois had one of the best defenses in the country last year, right? I mean, you look at just about all the statistical categories, and they were really solid. But this year, man, I mean, it's looking like a different Illinois team. I mean, Ole Miss transfer quarterback Luke Altmaier. I mean, he looked rough last week. He had 2 interceptions, right? And a QBR of 38.2. Part of that was because, the receivers kind of ball hit off his hands, popped up, boom, pick. But still, man, when you got a 38.2 QBR, I mean, it's not always 100% on, the line. It's not always 100% on the receivers. Because, I mean, I went back and looked at that game. He had time to make decisions in that game. So I do have to put some of the blame right there. Here's the other side that makes it really tough, Chris. It's a theme that we kind of touch on, and that's Altmaier's leading the team right now in rushing, right? So Reggie, wow. Yeah, I mean, he's you can see it right there. 22 carries, 139 yards. I mean, he's got to, they've got to get running back Reggie Love a little bit more involved in this one to take some pressure off of him. Just somebody to get more involved in this game, to take a lot more of the pressure off of him. Chris, what are your final score predictions for this one?
Christian, like I said, I agree with what you said about Illinois. Defenses look just totally opposite of what they did last year. And I think that's I honestly, against a good Penn State team here, let's be honest. Give me Penn State 38, Christian, Illinois 13. I think Penn State's defense is going to play lights out. I think they're going to pound the ball. Kansas had a lot of success, as you mentioned, on the ground against Illinois. Christian, I'd like to hear your thoughts, see where we kind of stand on this one.
We're close. We're really close on this one. Before I give my prediction, I'm going to say this. Would it shock me if Illinois comes out here and they they upset Penn State, or hell, they don't even have to upset them, but play them really, really close? No, it would not, because it's a weird year of football, and football in general can be a weird sport, especially college football. So, yeah, that would not shock me. But my final score prediction is going to be Penn State 45, Illinois 21.
Okay. Cool. A little bit of a shootout there. Some points being scored there, Christian.
Absolutely there, Chris. Moving on here, little LSU, Mississippi State. Again, for those watching, LSU, Mississippi State, the preview. Chris, what are your thoughts on Mississippi State?
Mississippi State, I've watched a little bit on. I haven't gotten a lot of time, me in particular, to see everything with this team, but they're 2-0. They got to win against, Southeast Louisiana. I believe it was like 48-7. Arizona in a close one last week. I think that one came right down to the wire in overtime, 31-24. But they did pull out the W against a Pac-12 school, which we all know the Pac-12 has been surprisingly really good this year as far as the conference goes. But Will Rogers, right? We know who Will Rogers is. I mean, this guy can sling the ball. He's put up some pretty good numbers so far this year, 33 of 46, 389 yards, Christian, 5 TDs, no interceptions. That's huge so far. Ooh. Yeah, you can't beat that when your quarterback's throwing touchdowns right and left. Doesn't look like Josh Allen out there. We know the kid can sling the rock. We also know that Mississippi State's defense, though, also this year, which is where I love this about him, is only giving up 87 yards per game, Christian, on the ground. You're going against an LSU team. We know they're loaded. We know they got the more talent across the board. They're going to want to be able to run the ball with Daniels back there at QB. We saw it against Florida State. He even had some success in that game doing that. But can they shut that down, though, with LSU? And I don't even mean shut it down. I mean just keep it reasonable. Don't give up over 200 yards on the ground to LSU here. And I will say this about Mississippi State. Use the crowd in this game. Big home game for them. Dave, I think it's Davis Wade Stadium, I think it is, in Starkville there. It's one of the tougher places to play. It really is. I mean, you look this up online. You ever watch a Mississippi State game? They're loud as shit, dude. I think they're going to be into this game. I think Mississippi State's got to get off early and often here. Keep the momentum up if they get an early score, something like that, Christian. But I know you're big on LSU this year. We had a little disagreement about the Florida State LSU game, obviously, before it played. Christian loves his LSU Tigers this year, but Christian, enlighten me, buddy.
Yeah, I'm $500 in the hole thanks to you. Put the money to good use there, Chris. But Here's my thing with LSU, right? I mean, they had a tough break, I feel like, against Florida State, especially, on offense, whenever they got in the red area, and then also in the second half of that game, they kind of imploded a little bit. The good news is, right, the Tigers, they had a fantastic 72-10 bounce back game against Grambling. I know it's Grambling. It's not a major Power 5 program, but at least they didn't look sluggish, right? That's the big thing you want to look for in some of those games, especially where you see some of these other teams that come out and they shit the bed against some of these other schools, right? So that's a positive for me. I think the even better news, for LSU is they're playing a major game. They get defensive tackle Mason Smith back, right?
Okay. Yep.
And I think they've kind of figured out how to use Harold Perkins a little bit more effectively on the defensive side of the ball there, right? That all conference, potential best defensive player in all of college football, Harold Perkins. Chris, the biggest question mark I have coming into this game is who's going to step up and carry the workload in the run game, right? Somebody's got to take that pressure off Jaden Daniels, right? I mean, it's one thing to get 100 yards or to get 80 yards against Grambling. Can you do it against an SEC opponent? Can you do it in a big game? And that's really what I want to see coming into this one here. I think, for LSU, they've got to come out and they've got to have strong play. Obviously, this is the SEC opener for them. Or are they going to come out flat? I mean, really, nothing shocks me with LSU anymore. I still am high on them. They still they got to win out, though, if they got any shot of making it to the playoff this year. I will say that. I'll go ahead and give you my final score predictions with it, Chris. I got LSU 35, Mississippi State 24.
Woo! God, we're close, man. We don't consult guys either before this. I like your take there. I think it's even closer, Christian. Give me LSU 27. Mississippi State 24. I think it comes down to the wire. I think that's going to be a really good game.
That's so interesting right there, Chris. Let's go. We got some people in the comments. We got Gator Swag. They got a big game, by the way, that we may or may not be covering here in just a bit. The Florida Gators do. Mississippi State upsets LSU 27-24. Jupiter Nelson says, have we done Kansas State yet? Not yet. We are going. Yeah, what's that they're saying? Save the best for last, right?
Absolutely.
So we're we got a couple more to get through here, Chris. We'll go with South Carolina versus UGA. Chris, what's your thoughts on South Carolina, the Gamecocks?
Oh my God, the border war, right? Is what they call this down there. Something like that with you, Georgia, South Carolina people. SC 1-1. The big loss week one. I think it was 31-17, Christian. At North Carolina. We all know the story. South Carolina couldn't run the ball. What was it? -2 yards rushing as a team in that game. Unbelievably, historically bad for a school that is in the SEC, a team that obviously has got a good quarterback in Spencer Rattler. We know what he can do. And surprisingly, Christian, he's played really well this year. He hasn't turned the ball over. He's been fairly consistent without a running game. So, I mean, hats off to Spencer Rattler. But they are missing some pieces. They had some people transfer out. Jaheim Bell, one of them that went to Florida State. That's, I think, kind of hurting South Carolina a little bit this year. He's a really good tight end. But my thing is, too, is SC's defense. I mean, Shane Beamer, what are you doing, bro? They're giving up over 400 yards a game, Christian. They beat Furman, I think, last week, 47-21. But what are you doing giving up 21 points against a Furman team, man? Let's go here. It makes a guy, kind of look at that a little cross-eyed, like, what the hell? But I will say this, though, Rattler, again, he's going to have to play elite in this game. He is completing 83% of his passes, which I think is awesome for Spencer Rattler. Yeah. He's got over 700 yards, 3 touchdowns, you name it. But Christian, they're 5th worst in the country rushing the ball right now. That's unbelievable to me, man. There's 133 teams out there in D1. I just don't know, Christian, how SC is going to keep up in this game, but you're going to let me know, as the true Georgia fan that you are, in a game, by the way, I believe the spread is 27.5 points. It's almost 4 touchdowns in favor of the Dogs. Let me have it.
Yeah, when you texted me that, I immediately had to take South Carolina in that just to cover the spread, man. I mean, you got to. It's too appealing not to, man. I mean, God. Look, Chris, here's the thing. UGA, they've come out flat 2 games in a row against UT Martin and Ball State. Now, they finished very strong, but again, coming out flat against those teams, make what you will of it, right? I mean, I think part of that problem has been the running back room has been super banged up. I mean, the Dogs, I mean, they've had to lean more on Carson Beck, first time starter there, and that passing game to really get, something established. I actually don't think that's a bad thing. It's good because you get a chance to make all the mistakes early and you get a chance to get in rhythm very early in the season, right? Against Cupcakes, where you can afford to make some mistakes probably and still win the game 40 something to nothing. So that's good. But believe it or not, Chris, here's the other side of this, right? UGA only had 99 yards rushing against Ball State.
That's surprising.
That for a Georgia team, we know about the running backs that they have. Roderick Robinson, obviously you can see it right there, leading the team right now, 14 carries, 88 yards. So to me, that is really shocking. Biggest question mark is going to be, how's Beck going to look in his first true action in college football, right? That's the biggest question mark to me. Because if he comes in and has an off day against South Carolina, I mean, dude, I don't put anything past South Carolina.
Is it 2019 again, all over again, where you guys scored one offensive touchdown in that game and fucked around and got beat?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, every true UGA fan knows how much trouble the Gamecocks have been for us over the years, Chris. I mean, so we can't play with South Carolina, right? Spencer Rattler, I mean, if he gets in and he gets locked on early, I mean, he's legit. I mean, he did it last year. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it's Spencer Rattler. Go ask Tennessee and Clemson what happened with that. Now, I know, obviously, you're going to say it's Tennessee and Clemson, but still, I mean, when the kid locks in, I mean, he can light you up. So defense should be good again this year, but I did watch a couple of times in both those games against UT Martin and Ball State. Two non-Power 5 schools, they were able to kind of run the ball downhill on us a little bit, right? I mean, nothing overly impressive, but it wasn't like what I'm used to seeing, what Georgia fans have become accustomed to seeing, where our defense lives in that backfield, right?
Yeah.
And they weren't feasting. I didn't feel as if, which I know is funny to laugh at, but that kind of becomes, I feel like even a team like South Carolina that struggles to run the ball and has negative 2 yards rushing against UNC. If I'm just saying, it's one of those trends where you might want to kind of look at right there, right? So I just want to see the Dogs kind of step up, shut down that run game like I expect them to do, and then force Rattler to beat us, right? I think that gives us the best chance, kind of like UNC did. Chris, final score prediction for me: UGA 27, South Carolina 17.
Wow. Okay, I know you talked about it. South Carolina was one of those teams all year for you that kind of scared you as a Georgia man, right? You talked about it. I think there'll be a team or two that'll scare Georgia this year or surprise Georgia, if you will. But it's not South Carolina this week. Give me Georgia 42, South Carolina 14. I think South Carolina's going to be so one-dimensional there, Christian, that Georgia's just too good defensively, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at some of the comments here. I just don't see South Carolina staying in this game at all. 49-17 Georgia 33-17. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, again, South Carolina historically, I know recent history kind of obviously goes towards us, but Georgia's kind of entering into new territory here, right? We don't know what they're going to look like against a Power 5 school. We don't.
I think with the new quarterback is kind of a question mark. We haven't seen a lot of Carson Beck, especially against a conference opponent. And you guys, this year, I would say is probably the first year I can honestly say your guys' running back room is super banged up. Just can't stay healthy. And you guys don't have like a Nick Chubb or a DeAndre Swift or somebody like that this year. You know what I mean? That marquee of a running back or a Todd Gurley, I could go down the list of crazy ass running backs you guys have always had. But it's very interesting for me. But man, I just think SC just can't move the ball. And then you know how Spencer Rattler is. He could have one of those great games, sure. But man, making somebody one-dimensional, Christian, we talk about it a lot.
Well, just remember I said this. This is a potential trap game for the Dogs, Chris. I mean, this is a potential trap game. If they can't run the ball and you force Carson Beck, I mean, that's the question you got to ask yourself, right? Seriously, if you're a Georgia fan, ask yourself, would you rather have Carson Beck or Spencer Rattler if you have to throw the ball in a shootout game? At least I know Spencer Rattler, what he can do, right? I don't know what Carson Beck can do yet in legit action. And there's been the whole thing with the Bobo and the play calling. It just hasn't at times looked in sync. And we're going to find out on Saturday.
Would you throw something in here just to add on to this game? Because it is an interesting game. Do you think maybe, and I know you probably don't want to hear this, but you are a true Dogs fan. do you think maybe they were kind of holding back a little bit in these games against some of the UT Martin and the Ball State?
I hope so.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. That's a good answer. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? I hope so. I hope that obviously they're holding back, but the other side of it too is, again, I don't know. I mean, I hope that they were holding back, but sometimes in college football, you can't hold back for sake of messing around and getting beat. Right. So we'll see. I think some of that too is just, they're breaking in a new offensive coordinator, even though he's been there.
Absolutely.
So,
yep.
Jupiter Nelson says, next up.
All right.
Hey, man, why don't you come clock in over here? Yeah. You know what I mean? Come clock in on the show.
Let's go.
Yeah. Here's what we'll do, by the way. We're almost done. We're about halfway through here with all this stuff. At the end of the show here, we're gonna drop in something there. Call in. We're gonna do a call-in show, obviously, at the end of this. But let's get through this here, Chris. Minnesota, UNC, the preview. Thoughts on UNC, Chris?
Oh, let's talk about them. We talked about South Carolina, right? They lost to North Carolina week 1. You guys know I'm high on Drake May this year. Surprisingly, yes, they did. I would say surprisingly, they were favored in that game against South Carolina. Looked good. I think they had like 9 sacks in that game. But last week, Christian, App State, again, just it doesn't matter who the fuck they're playing. They're taking somebody in the top 25 to overtime. That's just what they do. Sometimes they win, sometimes they don't. But that was a crazy ending of that game. We were actually live calling the game at that time. But hats off to App State. I got to throw that out there. North Carolina, I think, is a pretty good team this year. I think we kind of knew that. But Drake May, my boy, Heisman candidate, 45, 62. He's got over almost 500 yards passing. 2 TDs, though. That's surprising to me. Caleb Williams has 12, by the way. That's kind of crazy if you think about it. And the 2 INTs. The cool thing about UNC this year, they've been able to run the ball, Christian, very well. They take that pressure off of Drake May a little bit. I think it's O'Myron Hampton, I think, is their big-time running back over. He's got 42 carries. He's got over almost 300 yards on the ground, 5 TDs. He's averaged almost 7 yards per carry. Watch this kid in this game because it's going to be interesting against a pretty stout Minnesota defense that's usually top 20 every year. That'll be kind of one of those keys to the game if we were to call this game. But UNC's defense, I don't know if they're good or bad. We harped on them last year. I thought they were kind of a joke on defense, giving up 30-some points a game last year. They're giving up 400 and some odd yards again defensively, Christian. I don't know if it's Mac Brown. That's the way he coaches. I don't know. He always has great offenses. It seems like even at Texas, a lot of the times, great offenses, sometimes suspect defenses. Right now, they're currently in the bottom 25 in defense. So coming into this game against Minnesota, something's got to give here. Is UNC really that good? We saw Minnesota against Nebraska in a tight game, which we think that Nebraska has a decent defense, Christian. Is Minnesota's offense really not that elite? We really don't know. Minnesota's kind of a hard team to kind of judge. I'm going to kick it back over to you here. Enlighten me, sir, with the Minnesota Gophers.
I'm going to say something you're not going to like. And I'm glad you brought that last point up there. That's what makes college football so good, and I'm going to piss some of our listeners off too. Minnesota beat a rebuilding Nebraska team, 13-10, right? Here's a shocking score for you. They only beat Eastern Michigan 25-6. I'm going to say that one more time for you. They only beat Eastern fucking Michigan 25-6. I know all I need to know now probably about this Minnesota offense. And don't come out here some, Eastern Michigan alumnus or some, Eastern Michigan player or fan or whatever have you that's going to come on here and say, but Eastern Michigan's good. Yeah. Minnesota, if they're clicking, should be a top 25 team. Let's not kid ourselves here, man. Defense, probably a top 40 to 50 defense. But, I think the Gophers offense, they're going to have to convert and score touchdowns against North Carolina to keep up in this one, Chris.
Absolutely.
The Greek Rifle was 10 of 15, so not bad from an efficiency standpoint. And he had 1 interception against Eastern Michigan, right? Here's the thing, right? The run game looked good, though. I'm going to say this, right? Darius Taylor, I think they're a true freshman running back. He went off in that one. Michigan, they put up 296 yards against them, right? On the ground. But, they only managed to put up 55 against Nebraska. I do think Nebraska had a much better defense, obviously, than Eastern Michigan does. Where am I going to rank this at, as far as who has the better defense, Nebraska, North Carolina? We're still figuring part of that out there, right? But I think this UNC team, they're most likely going to if I was UNC, right, and I'm playing Minnesota's offense, I'm going to load the box. I'm going to stuff the run, and I'm going to force Kaliak Manis to beat me throwing the ball. By the way, fun fact, I don't think I pronounced that kid's right a single time throughout that game.
You call him the Greek rifle, I call him AK-8, man. I mean, I'm not going to even attempt. You were close there. You were close, Christian. I give you hats off for that.
All right, let's get here. Final score predictions for this one, Chris. Who you got?
Man, I know I'm a little sus on North Carolina's defense yet. Give me Minnesota 20 points in this game. They're going to score 20,
Ooh.
Christian. I know that surprises you. I know you got it lower. I guarantee you do. North Carolina 33.
33.
Much offense, too much Drake May, man.
Okay. We're not too far off here.
Yeah.
I think Minnesota's defense is going to, obviously I think they're better than what a lot of people think. I think UNC is going to have 24 points in this one. Minnesota 14. So again, I'm not saying UNC is going to lose, but I think it's going to be a closer game than what a lot of people will probably expect going into this one.
No, I like it. It was a good take, Christian. Way to make the case for the Minnesota Gopher, man.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, here looking at this, Gator Swag says in North Carolina 27-14. Jupiter Nelson says North Carolina 30-33 won overtime. Yeah, I could see that, man. It's gonna be a close game.
Spread 7.5 UNC right now currently, so it's going to be a close game. You guys said it though. I think Minnesota's defense is pretty legit. I do, even though I know you can say what you want about Nebraska's offense, but I think they're pretty legit. It's going to be interesting. I think that's kind of a cool game. One of these games that's going to go under the radar too, Christian, with just Minnesota, right? UNC. They're going on the road here. Going to go play out in North Carolina. Drake May is going to probably be the second pick in the draft, right? I mean, it'll be kind of interesting to see how they go against an actual elite quarterback other than some scrub like Jeff Sims. You know what I mean? See what he can do against that Minnesota defense.
Absolutely agree, Chris. Let's take a look right here. Tennessee versus Florida. This is going to get the Florida man riled up right here, Chris. What do you think about Florida coming into this one?
Everybody knows my hatred towards Florida and the Florida man, but no. All things aside here, Florida's 1-1 this season. We know that they lost to Utah. I think it was 24-11. Christian, we watched that game a little bit on the side. They beat a JV school last week in McNeese State. I don't take too much from that. 49-7. The Graham Cracker, as I like to call him, old Graham Mertz, my favorite quarterback in the country. If you guys don't know, he played at Wisconsin forever. Was a walking dumpster fire, in my opinion. Some people will tell me anyway, that he's winning the Heisman this year, but he's been 45-61. He's got 500 yards passing. He's got 2 TDs and one interception. He didn't play bad. I would say that Utah game, he didn't play terrible. They had to throw the ball a lot in that game. They were down most of that game. So I'll give him some props there. But Florida's run game, Christian, what the fuck is going on there with Etienne and Johnson Jr.? These guys, they relied so heavily last year. I know they had AR-15, but on that run game, that was the best part of their offense last year. It surprises the shit out of me that they can't run the goddamn ball. I think they got between those two stud backs, they got like 225 yards between them. Even that's counting the McNeese State game. I think Utah, they rushed for like 13 yards in that game. That just surprises me out of the Florida team so far. I will say this going into this game, though, Christian. Florida has owned Tennessee the last 20 years. Yeah. I think the last 18 years, they've won 16 out of 18 or some crazy stat like that. You know this even more than I do, being the SEC man that you are. They lost last year to Tennessee, and Tennessee was a very good football program last year. I think they won 11 games, had Hendon Hooker, Jalen Wyatt, Cedric Tillman, all these guys. I think Tennessee pulled that off by about 5 points, Christian, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to let you enlighten me on the Tennessee team this year. I know you are ultra high on them. Give it to me, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, you said it best, Chris. Tennessee snapped a 5-game win streak, for the Gators, against the Gators last year, though. I mean, so big win, 11-win team here. Hendon Hooker's gone, right? For all my Tennessee fans, out there, dare I say you might go down to Gallatin Pike and find a different type of hooker to run your offense? No, I'm just kidding. In all seriousness, though, let's be honest here, Chris. I mean, Tennessee's offense, under Josh Heupel, not worried about him. I know Milton, there's a lot of question marks coming into him about this game. What's he going to do? Kid can throw it a mile. We've seen that not translate a ton of times at this level, right? Talk to some of the guys I know that are very close to the program. They're excited about what Milton can do. He can throw the ball a mile, but where he struggles is those short to immediate sort of pass plays, right? He's just trying too much with it. And that's where I think Hendon Hooker was really, really good. He was able to take what they gave him. But I think, in this game, can he settle down and play within himself, right? That's the big question mark. Settle down, play within yourself if you're going to be playing against Florida here. The run game, Jalen Wright and Jabari Small looks good as well for Tennessee. I mean, the Vols have averaged 250 yards rushing this season in both the games they played. So that's going to be a big thing kind of coming into this one. Can they run the ball? Can they settle in? Can they make those plays that they need to make? Here's another big thing too, Chris. I mean, the defense has looked better, but that's going to be put to the test, I think, this weekend, right? They're going to take on a Florida team that has an offense that has an equal amount of questions, going into this game, the same way I look at Tennessee's defense. Biggest thing I'm going to say is to me, the matchup of this game comes down to who makes the most mistakes between Tennessee's defense and Florida's offense, right? Can Tennessee's defense do good enough and force turnovers? And same thing, can Florida's offense do well enough, convert, score touchdowns, and play a relatively clean game? That's going to determine this matchup for me. Chris, final score predictions. Tennessee, I got to do right by some of the Florida fans here.
Oh, boy.
27. Florida, 21. I'm going to keep it within a touchdown game. I think you got to do right by them.
Whoa. Damn it, man. This interesting take there, Christian. I was not expecting that. I'm going to start calling you the Tennessee man, though, from here on out, not the Georgia man. No, I'm just giving you shit, though. But for real, before I give my prediction, though, Christian, I think you're right. I will lean, though, can Florida run the ball? You said it. We're going to find out something in this game, whether Florida's offense is not very good and Tennessee's defense is elite. Like, I don't say elite, but way better than they were last year. We know they struggled on defense last year. They had such a great offense. It's hard to compete with that. But I will say this in this game. Give me, though, Tennessee 34, Christian, Florida 21. I think they covered the spread. I think Florida's a 7 or 7.5 point dog in this one at home. I know the Swamp is a tough place to play, though, especially for Tennessee.
Absolutely there, Chris. By the way, really quick, before we get into our last couple games here, we've got a lot of Florida fans here. We've got a couple Tennessee guys running around in the chat somewhere. Do you give Florida a legit shot? I mean, do you see a possibility where they win this game?
Yeah. I just can't do it. I just haven't seen enough for me personally, Christian, out of Graham Mertz yet this year. But that's a good question to ask from the Florida man. Gator Swag, give me an answer. Come on, bro.
Of course, he's going to tell you, yeah. But I'll kind of answer here. I'll stick up for the Florida man a little bit here on the show. I think here's my thing. I'm going to make it really quick here. I know a lot of Tennessee fans, they do not feel confident playing this game, especially since it's at the Swamp. Again, you'd want to see a lot more confidence from a team like that. Hell, I think Tennessee fans are more confident to play Georgia than they are to play Florida.
That's crazy.
This year. So, I mean, which is absolutely, crazy to me. But it's not saying anything negative against Florida. It's just I could see a world where, hey, kind of like Colorado, maybe we were a little low on Florida. Maybe they do come in and maybe they turn it around and they make us eat some crow. But we'll see. Like I said, we're gonna find out this weekend. We'll be covering that game like around 5:40 on Saturday here. All right, Chris, getting into the Pitt versus West Virginia preview here. Chris, what's your thoughts on Pitt?
The old backyard brawl, as they call it, Christian. This game used to be crazy about 15 years ago. And nothing against Pittsburgh, West Virginia when I say that. I know it's still a competitive game. Pitt's 1-1 on the year, which kind of surprised me. I was pretty high on Pitt this year. They beat Wofford week 1, 45-7. They turned around, lost to Cincinnati, who's now in the Big 12, if I'm not mistaken, 21-27 in a close game last week. We know about Pitt and what they're going to do under Narduzzi, man. He wants to run the football. They picked up the Boston College transfer last year. Phil Jurkovec, I think is his name, something like that. Chris, we've heard his name. He's been in college football for a while. Not a bad quarterback, but they're throwing the ball a little more at Pitt than I normally like, to be honest with you. This kid isn't Kenny Pickett. Let's just get that out the window. Not going to have a season like that, but he's 27 to 55. He's got, almost 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, but only a 47% completion percentage. That's a problem. I don't like Pitt throwing the ball that much. But Pitt's defense, again, always stout, right? They're only giving up 250 yards a game. Something's going to break in this game. I know you're going to talk about West Virginia here in a second, but Pitt leads this series. This game seems like it's always close. It doesn't matter what the records are. Throw them out the window. It's one of these games where I think it just doesn't matter. I think these two teams hate each other. I think it's just kind of like that. I want to say Michigan State type of rivalry. You're real close. West Virginia has owned this though, Christian. I think 23 years they've won like 15 or 16 times. West Virginia was supposed to be one of these, I would say probably one of the worst teams this year in the Big 12. And you're going to enlighten me here. And I want you to tell me why. I want to hear your score prediction after this, but the way you're smiling over there, I can kind of tell you might be doing something to me. I know that smirk. So enlighten me here on West Virginia. I know where you're going with. I almost guarantee I know you're going with this.
Yeah, Chris, backyard brawl. You said it best. I mean, Pitt leads the all-time series, and I mean, they got the most recent win. But I mean, last year, if you watch that game, it was a fluky win for Pitt. I say fluky because West Virginia looked really good. They had JT Daniels, best quarterback in college football history. If you watch the show, you obviously know that whole argument. But I mean, literally, the ball hit a West Virginia wide receiver right in the hands on like a little hitch route. Pops up in the air, pick six the other way. Pitt almost kind of wins. West Virginia takes it, drives all the way down, gets it in the red area, and then the game ends. They just didn't score, right? So kind of, I don't want to say fluky, but Pitt won that game last year. They figured out a way to win it in Pitt. West Virginia, to me, Chris, though, this year, I mean, they actually held their own against a top 10 team that was Penn State, but they fell apart late in that one, right? I mean, it was a 21-7 score in the third quarter, but quarterback Eric Green and the Mountaineers offense, they're going to have to come correct against a very tough Pitt defense, man. I mean, that secondary at Pitt looks good, right? For what it's worth, though, I mean, the defense looked good against Penn State, right? I mean, for three quarters at least. And then the levees broke and they were gassed and they gave up 17 points to. Here's the other thing. They gave up 17 points to FCS Duquesne last week.
Wow.
That's a little, again, that's a little different for me right there, right? On the flip side of it, Pitt's offense did look out of sorts, though, against a reload in Cincinnati. So this game might be one of those. This might be one of the hardest games I feel like we've tried to predict all year.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Give me in a very, very close one. West Virginia 20, Pitt 17.
Yes, he finally picked the upset. Christian, if you guys haven't known so far this year, you guys might want to tail this guy in betting. He picked the Duke over Clemson. Last week, he picked Washington State over Wisconsin. This guy's knocking him out the park with some of these crazy upsets on this show. We take a lot of shit for that. But Christian, I'm so close with you, but the other way. I got Pittsburgh 20 in a low-scoring game. West Virginia 17.
And Chris, I kind of figured we would probably differ on this, right? This is where we start to differ, and we really kind of start to split a little bit as far as that's concerned. But that's okay. I mean, again, that's what makes college football fun. We don't have to wait very long. Couple more days, and we're going to get to see how all this plays out. And I'm going to win some money back from Chris over there.
Woo!
Getting into our last game.
I love this game.
Right here. One of the most interesting games, I feel like, Chris. Kansas State versus Mizzou. Chris, tell us a little bit about Mizzou.
About Mizzou. Let's be honest. Missouri, Christian, I'm not even going to dig into stats on Mizzou. We know what Mizzou has kind of been, right? I can't even pronounce their head coach's name, Christian. Is it Dinklewich, or how do you say his name? I'm going to let you do it. You're better at that pronouncing it than I am.
Drinkowicz. Actually, did you pick Mizzou or did you have Kansas State?
I had Kansas State, but you said Mizzou, so you threw me off there a little bit, my man.
I threw myself off, just like I'm going to throw this off right here. I'll tell you about Mizzou, by God. Let's start over with this here, Chris. Kansas State Kansas State versus Mizzou. Second time's the charm here at the show. Look, Chris, Mizzou almost lost to Middle Tennessee State last week, 19-23.
Oh my God.
I mean, how are the Tigers going to respond to that? I think a lot of it was just, lack of explosive plays. I mean, the Tigers, they're still searching, right? I mean, they're still searching for those explosive plays, right? Like Jonathan Gannon talks about shots, explosives. The Cardinals coach, right? I mean, kind of awkward there.
You love that. You love that segment, don't you?
I need to clip that out and put that on here. That right there is a soundbite. But quarterback Brady Cook and uber talented wide receiver Luther Burden, right? Have just they've you got to get on the same page, in a meaningful game. That's really what I want to see here. I just wonder how much of that needs to be put on them, or how much that needs to be put on Drinkowitz, because I got a lot of friends that are Mizzou fans, and they don't mince words about Drinkowitz, man. I mean, they don't necessarily like him. A lot of the fans don't. Defensively, they haven't looked bad, but they also haven't really created the turnovers you would expect either, for an SEC school kind of going up against some of the competition that they've gone up against. Mizzou lost this game last year to Kansas State 40-12, and I don't know if that's going to change this year either, right? Chris, I've got my predictions here, right, as the SEC homer, but I want to hear about Kansas State first in your predictions.
Here's the thing about K-State. I think they've been slept on.
Mm-hmm.
They won the Big 12 last year over a TCU team in that game. They bring back a lot of people. They brought back a lot of talent, a lot of veterans, guys have been around for 3 or 4 years. I think they're very slept on. I think K-State is one of these teams in this game. This is why I love this game right now, is that Missouri, these guys used to be Big 12 rivals. Trust me. I remember back in the day, these two hate each other, kind of like the border war type of thing with South Carolina and Georgia. I'll say this, K-State starting the season off like they should, 2-0. I know they beat Southeast Missouri or whoever the hell it was, 45-0. Throw it out the window, fine. But they beat a decent Troy team. This is kind of funny, 42-13. The spread on that game was only 13 points last week. K-State ran away with the game. It looked dominant. Will Howard looks awesome. The quarterback's been there for 4 years. This is his first year to shine. Has looked amazing. 39-58 Christian, 547 yards, 5 TDs. He's got the 2 picks in there. You don't love that, but hey, they're doing what they need to do. Defensively, though, is where K-State has really shined. And I can't believe I'm saying this about a Big 12 team this year. They're 6th in the country, man, and only giving up like 6 points a game, which is very evident. You're going to say Southeast Missouri, they shut them out. Sure, and they should have. But they're only sitting I think they're sitting 17th, 18th in yards allowed too. So the defense of K-State is legit. They were pretty good last year. I think they're even better this year. Going against the Missouri offense that we have a lot of questions about. Let's be honest. Christian, I'm giving the prediction right away here, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Give me K-State 27, Missouri 14.
Wow, you've bumped your absolute fucking head there, dude. 27.
You bet. Let's go.
I think Kansas State's going to put up at least 30 in this one. So give me Kansas State 31, Mizzou 10.
Oh, we weren't that far off then. You made me sound like I'm like the dude holding the freaking door at Walmart. Come on, man. I was close. 27. You said 30. I said Missouri gets a few more points, but I think it's late, man. But no, I think this is a very interesting game, though, man. The spread, by the way, you think I'm crazy. The spread is only 4.5.
Jeez.
Yeah. So Vegas, baby.
Ooh, got a little double action there. A little zoom in, a little close-up action.
Close up there.
Daniel says K-State 35, Mizzou 10. Yeah, that's pretty well on right there, man. It's pretty well on. By the way, like I said, we dropped in here. We got a link here to StreamYard. Come click into that. Do a call-in show. We'll get you on the show here, obviously. Yep. You don't have to turn your camera on. You can obviously just decline the camera portion of it. Yep. Love to kind of hear from you guys. What games are you most excited about? Going into this week, what are you most happy or disappointed in, I guess, through 2.5 weeks of college football?
Absolutely. You guys got any questions about your team, another team? You want to talk about teams that have disappointed this year? Christian and I cover all college football. This is kind of what we do as our second job. I would call it even almost sometimes more than my real job, Christian. We spend a lot of time doing this. So you guys give us a call, drop in the chat. We don't give a shit. We'll answer some questions.
Absolutely. Chris, I can say one thing too, again, I mean, Colorado, not to keep bringing them up. They probably shocked me the most. I mean, you got to think obviously they're going to win next week or this week at Colorado State. Then they get into that Big 12 play. And I just wonder how do they hold up in Big 12 play? Playing Oregon and USC back to back, that to me is where things might get a little dangerous.
Okay, I got a question. I like that. I'm not gonna even go down that road because I think we both agree at Colorado. I think Colorado shocked a lot of people. But we'll say this though. I've heard a lot of "we're back," and I hate that statement from Miami fans with the big win over Texas A&M, right? In Texas. What's your thoughts on both those teams and from the previous weekend? Big win by Texas. Obviously, we covered the Texas at Alabama game. What's your thoughts?
I would say Texas is back. I think Miami to me has the potential to lose a couple games this year.
Absolutely.
I think that Florida State game is going to be a very tough one. I think they'll obviously make it a closer game than what we thought. But do I think that I'm going to pick Miami to win outright? That's very tough for me to kind of do.
I'm going to interject with Miami. You talked about them. I agree with you 100% on your statement. I think I had them winning the Big 12 this year. I think I had Miami having maybe 7 wins, but Miami plays Clemson. Clemson is one of those most disappointing teams. I think we both kind of agree so far this year. They play. Would you take right now from what you've seen? I know it's only been 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Would you take Miami over Clemson on a neutral site?
Absolutely. Without even thinking about it. I mean, because, and that's going to piss the Clemson man off, but at the same time, the way Clemson looked against Duke, and don't get me wrong. I mean, Duke, fantastic story, good football team. I just think Miami, if you come out and you struggle against Miami, it won't even be a close game. You come out and struggle against Florida State, it'll be over at halftime.
I agree. And I think people, by the way, I wanted to bring this up on the flip side of Miami while we're on them. A&M, I watched that game on the side, most of it, especially the first half. They look like 2 top 25 teams, personally. I know people want to fire Jimbo Fisher now, and fuck that. I thought those teams, that could have been a Florida State LSU type of game. It's kind of how it played out, really. Second half, Miami got up. A&M had to try to crawl their way back into it, throwing the ball a ton, probably more than they probably even should have, and threw a couple turnovers. But I think Miami's a good football team this year. I think I was a little low on them. I think we both kind of were. But Miami does look good. They really do. I was very impressed. And I'm not saying that A&M was a bad team. I think A&M is actually a pretty decent team. Me and you had a hard time this year, Christian, probably more than any other team, trying to predict where A&M might finish this year or, as far as predictions go. They play in the SEC, but they're a solid team. They got a ton of, there ain't many teams walking around that got more talent on a roster than A&M. Let's be honest.
No, you're not wrong. But it's interesting that you brought up Texas and you had asked, is Texas back? I think Texas is back only from the standpoint of that Bama game was really going to be one of their toughest games. Obviously Oklahoma, but we saw how Oklahoma looked against SMU.
They play Tech, and Tech fucking shit the bed now. 0-2.
Yeah, I think they'll have some closer games, but I still think Texas they have the easier path to me.
Question for you. Texas goes to the SEC next year. Do you think they compete over there? I know that's a very open-ended question there, but do you think that they can compete week in and week out with the SEC? With the talent they have in Steve Sarkisian as their head coach?
I would say, yeah. I think they're kind of built. I think they're built to do all right, especially in that SEC West. You got to think about this, right? Ole Miss, right? They compete in the SEC West. And, we're going to sit here and say that Ole Miss's defense, now they got Pete Golden, and I think their defense will be a lot better going forward. But are we still going to sit here and say Ole Miss's defense is any worse than Texas's defense?
No, I think you're correct on that.
So, yeah, I think they'll compete, as far as to me, the way I look at it, Texas has that ability, and Oklahoma for that matter. They have that ability to come over next year to the SEC and get maybe not compete for the conference, but they have that ability, I think, to knock somebody off, right? Like, say Auburn starts off really hot and they play Oklahoma late in the year or something like that. Could Oklahoma knock them off? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Could Texas knock off Bama again, like on something like they did? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Got another question for you while we're on this topic. I'm pretty close to the Oklahoma fan base. I got people in the family, and I got a lot of good friends that are Oklahoma fans. I went to their game last year against Nebraska even and sat with a bunch of their crowd. But with those two teams going to the SEC, like you just mentioned, who do you think next year, hypothetically speaking, has a better shot to compete in the SEC, Oklahoma or Texas next year? I know it sounds like a very simple question, but just from both sides, I know it's only 2 weeks in this season, so we haven't seen a ton we saw a little bit from Texas. Oklahoma's been doing what they need to do so far. They haven't played anybody, but what's your thoughts on that one?
Ooh, as good as I feel about Sark and Texas's offense, I kind of think that Brent Venables and Oklahoma's defense will get to that point, especially this year. I think they're going to be much more improved on the defensive side of the ball. Oklahoma's offense, can be prolific, and they've got a really talented 5-star quarterback that's a true freshman that'll be taking over for Gabriel after this year.
Yep.
But starting a true freshman, in the SEC next year, that might be a little rough. So I guess I would have to probably lean a little more with Texas in that.
I agree with you. Just a question I thought I'd throw out there, because both those teams have been just powerhouses in the Big 12 when you think of the Big 12, right? You think of Oklahoma, you think of Texas, and those two teams. And just kind of a question I had to throw out there just to hear your answer on. So I agree with you 100%. If I disagreed, I would have threw something in there, but you're spot on with me, which we don't agree all the time, but sometimes we do.
Well, that's all right. Sometimes you got to know. As the resident, the guy that's right more times on the show, you got to know when to competition.
Christian 10 of 16 this year on the Picks Live. I'm 8 of 16. He kicked my ass last week with 8 and 10. If you guys need to tail Christian on these head-to-head picks, man, I'm telling you.
Man, if we were playing in baseball, we'd be Hall of Famers.
Right? Batting well.
Daniel says Washington 12-1. Florida State 12-1, Georgia 12-1, Texas 12-1, Michigan 12-1.
Jesus,
who gets left out of the playoffs?
Oh my God. I need a little bit more. I know it sounds crazy. Who was those one loss? Who those one losses to? This comes down. Go ahead. Answer this one.
I'll just say this. To kind of, this is the way I look at it, right? I hate to do it. I think it would have to be Washington, right? The only reason why I say I'd have to take Washington to be left off is because you look at where Florida State, Georgia, Texas, and Michigan are ranked. I know Washington's ranked. Where is Washington even ranked for that matter? I know they're in the top 15.
They're in top 10, I think.
They're top 10, aren't they? Yeah.
Oregon, them, and USC, all right there.
Yeah. But that's the question is, that's what makes it so difficult, right? If they all went 12-1 for whatever reason, I think it just comes down to rankings, right? If Georgia or Michigan lose, they're probably not going to fall outside the top 10. If Florida State were to lose a game, because where are they sitting at right now? They're top 4 for sure, right?
Oh yeah. My thing is my question: who did I think it comes out? Who'd you lose to? And what was that team's record? That one's a tough one to me. If Washington lost to UCLA, for example, or something, I don't even know if UCLA is on their schedule, and UCLA goes 8-4, but Florida State only lost to a Clemson team that ends up only losing 1 game or 2 games. Like Georgia, say they lose to LSU, which we know LSU and Georgia might beat up. I don't know. That's a tough. I hope that doesn't happen, because those are all really, really good teams, by the way. Those are very good teams. Daniel, I know you love your Huskies. I will give you props, though. Your Huskies look fucking awesome so far this year. They've done what they needed to do against pretty much everybody, and I think they still have the best defense in the Pac-12, right up there with Utah.
Now, I will say this. If Washington goes 13-0, which could very well happen, right? They've looked pretty good. It looks like they haven't missed a beat from last year. If Washington goes 13-0 and that other scenario happens, I think you'd give it to Washington. Obviously, I'd like to say they'd probably figure out they would get in.
Pac-12 is tough though, man. There's 8 teams rated in the top 25 right now. That's a third of the goddamn top 25.
Yeah,
for a conference that's dismembering after this year.
But that's the other thing too. I just looked at. I mean, this is the top 4 plus Washington. Basically, is what this is.
Yeah, I agree.
So, well, it is. It's what it is. Georgia's number 1, Michigan's number 2. I think FSU is number 3, and then Texas is number 4 right now.
4 or 5, yeah, depending on which one you look at. Yep, because a lot of people have USC way up there. But that would mean Washington would probably beat USC, I would hope. Because by the way, they have a Pac-12 title game over there. They're actually one of the ones that play a conference game. So, title game. I'm with you. I don't know. This would be tough. I just have to see who they lose to. I like it all. I do. Yeah, no, that's a interesting scenario. Definitely could help. I mean, nobody's going to kick Texas if they – I don't know. I still also think it's who you lose to, though. Like, what happens if Texas loses to Texas Tech and they got, 7 wins? You hold that loss against them? Against a Michigan team that loses to Ohio State, but Ohio State only has 1 loss?
I think it would just depend, too. Do they bounce back? Do they win the Big 12?
See, there you go. That's what there's a lot of questions. I mean, that's a very good point.
I mean, that's what makes it so difficult here. So difficult. Yeah, let's take a look here, because now this is another one right here. Gator Swag says, I think Mertz has done a solid job so far. Wish he would get a little more respect.
He put up 11 points against Utah. You beat Tennessee this week. I'll give you credit, Gator Swag. You beat Tennessee this week, and the Gators put up over 24 points. I'll put a little more respect on Graham Mertz. You got to remember, buddy, I watched him play a ton at Wisconsin. Not because I hate Wisconsin, not because I hate Graham Mertz. I just don't think he's that great a quarterback. Christian?
Yeah. I mean, he hasn't looked bad. I'll say that. I mean, he hasn't looked terrible, but he hasn't. He also hasn't looked dominant. You know what I'm saying? He put up 333 yards against Utah. It was 31 of 44. 70% completion rating, obviously, there, or percentage, I should say. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The interception, obviously, I know, probably wasn't his fault. And that, it's tough. It's tough for me to say, because I just know so many Wisconsin fans, and I know that's the thing, right? Obviously, Graham Mertz did something at a program like Wisconsin for 4 years? Since 2019. Well, really, since 2020. So 3 full seasons as a starter, right? The guy did enough to obviously make them believe. But the other side of this that I think you guys are getting ready to figure out is you're going to be in these games where it may not be all that close, and you're going to need Graham Mertz to not be checked down Jesus out there.
Thank you.
And start absolutely having to put up more points on the board. That's where I'm at with it, right? Can he win? Can Graham Mertz win a shootout game in the SEC where Florida's defense gets picked apart?
Let's say this. You're right. I agree with you 100%, Christian. I'll ask Christian this question. I'll also ask you, Gator Swag, this question. Who would you rather have? Milton from Tennessee, who's his first year actually as a true starter, or Graham Mertz? Christian, who would you take?
I would probably take Joe Milton.
Thank you. Swag?
Because of the upside.
Yep. You said it best. Swag, what do you think? Joe Milton's only started 2 games, essentially, in his college career. Graham Mertz started 28.
Well, he's answering that here. Throwing the corn.
Go ahead and answer a question, Christian. I'm going to use the little boy.
Yeah. I got you. Thank you, sir. All right. Playoffs should be 8 teams. Power 5 conferences winners get in. The next 3 best teams in the country get in. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I'm personally one of those people. I think we should just expand it, because as soon as you go to 8 teams, then there's going to be people that want 10 and then 12. And just, I'm not saying we need to do March Madness and make this thing a whole month long extravaganza, and have 100 and something teams in this damn thing. I would probably, where I'm at with it is, I just want to see it be maybe 18, 16 teams, something like that, keep it under 20 or right at 20. and then cut out some of these bullshit games. You know what I mean? Instead of having 12 games, like let's just go to 10 games a year. Everybody gets, like, if you want, you get one cupcake, but you got to play 9 conference games. And then you obviously play your, your conference championship game, whatever have you. And then you just get, you get into more of the playoffs, right? And you make that more appetizing there.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Like, to me, I wish they would, just my opinion, make it 16, go with the 10-game schedule, and then just let everybody play it out. That takes pretty much, if you did 16, if you guys look at the last year's records, all the teams with 2 losses, Alabama included, Penn State, throw all those teams in there and you just play it out. You know what I mean? And take that last month and a half to play those games out. It only takes 4 to win the national title. I wish they would just do that. Then you don't have this huge debate last year, right? Christian, Ohio State backdooring their way in, Bama, Nick Saban crying on TV because he thought that they should have been in with 2 losses, even though you lost to LSU and Tennessee. You should have beat one of those teams. You would have got in, right? I just want to see it be played out, not on paper, played out in person, and not up to a committee to decide, well, we'll take a 1-loss team over this 1-loss team, or that's what I want to see. And I'm with you. I think we kind of all have agreed about this. I remember the BCS days. I hated the fact that the computer decided that. I'll tell you this much. Nebraska in 2002 should have never made it. They got beat by Colorado in a Big 12 title game, destroyed, by the way. Still somehow had to play the 2001 Miami team. So I wish they would just go to a bigger playoff, which hopefully they're going to do at some point. And I think it'll continue to expand. But I just want to see it played out. That's one thing I like about March Madness. I know there's also 360 some D1 schools in basketball, but that's why they have 68 teams make the tournament, some crazy ass number like that. It's a big number, but we see teams. How many times do you see it, Christian, in March Madness? Some 12, 13 seed makes the Final Four. It happens. Got to play to win, man. That's where I'm at.
By the way, Gator Swag responded. I mean, he said, I would go with Mertz because of the 32 starts, more experience, and Mertz is a little more accurate. But as far as mobile, I would go with Milton. There's been a lot of moments when Milton was throwing way over his wide receivers. If you look at ESPN, they say Mertz is a better QBR, not by much. Yeah, here's kind of the dangerous thing with that, right? If you want to kind of go down that rabbit hole, I mean, Graham Mertz at times at Wisconsin was very turnover prone, right? Joe Milton just looking at that, had 10 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. Thus far, he has 4 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He has, let's see, how many? He has 3 rushing touchdowns. I mean, so he's accounted for 7 touchdowns and no turnovers.
Very good stat, Christian. Gators also, man. I know what you're trying to do here. I love that you love your team. Trust me, I'm a Nebraska man. I get it. Not that you guys are as bad as we are by any means, but my point is that if Graham Mertz has all this experience, shouldn't he be a lot better? I mean, at this, in the stat-wise completion percentage, but I also think Joe Milton plays in a better system. He's got a better coach, and I think they're going to do what's best. And Tennessee, by the way, guys, if you haven't noticed, Tennessee's running the ball a lot more. They're kind of become a run team so far this year from 2 games. I know that's not a big sample size, but they're kind of leaning on the run game more than they did last year. If you guys don't remember, Hendon Hooker was amazing. I thought Hendon Hooker could have won the Heisman last year if he didn't get hurt. I thought he was going to be. I thought he'd been definitely a candidate for that spot. So, Christian, I know you want to say something over there. You're reading into some stuff. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say this. I liken it to baseball, to use kind of a baseball sort of stat. Would you rather? Let me go click out of this here real quick. Would you rather go with a guy that's going to play small ball that can get you a single, every so often, but he doesn't really possess that ability to maybe come through in clutch situations, and he's more he's more consistent maybe, right? Like he can play small ball, but in big situations, he kind of folds. He's not going to hit a lot of home runs. Or would you rather go with a guy that strikes out a lot, but bashes 50 home runs? You know what I mean? A year. I mean, in this day, and like if you ask that question, maybe in the 70s or the 80s, they probably say, yeah, we'll take the guy that's more consistent. He's more a true baseball player. Nowadays, you ask that, they're going to take the guy that hits 50 home runs and strikes out 60% of the time.
Absolutely. It's about points. And I again, at the end of the day, it's not. I'm not sold on Milton, but I also think he's also only started 2 games so far this year. Graham Mertz has got more experience. I see what you're trying to do, and I respect it. I'm not saying if Graham Mertz goes out and plays well and Florida wins this fucking game, I will come on next week and I will give him his flowers. I truly will.
Yeah. I mean, here's another interesting thing here too. He says Florida's, before we get into that, Jordan the Corn says, I can tell you who I wouldn't go with. That's Jeff Sims. Nebraska has to figure their shit out or we might not get 4 wins. I told Chris this yesterday. I called Chris and I told him about that. The offense of Nebraska, they have got to figure something out here this week. I mean, with Sims, because they say he's starting. And I can tell you right now, this Northern Illinois team, right, Chris? Northern Illinois.
Beat Boston College last week.
They beat Boston College last week. And if the offense comes out and struggles, this might be Georgia Southern all over again. Maybe it doesn't happen here, right? Maybe this is South Dakota State or South Dakota, whatever it was, where it just looks really rough for like the first half and they pull away in the second half. And then La Tech, right? Maybe La Tech is the Georgia Southern game. But here's the thing. If the offense comes out and looks like shit against these next 2 teams, somebody needs to be fired. I'm not saying Matt Rule needs to be gone, but somebody on that offensive coaching staff, whether it be a quarterback coach, whether it be Satterfield, we need to start rethinking some stuff.
Yeah. I didn't want to have to talk about the Huskers, but you're right. I don't even know where to start with this because it is so bad. I will say this, though. Children of the Corn, you've been around a while. I know your age, roughly. This reminds me of the 2021 Nebraska Husker team. And I don't even want to say this is embarrassing to say the best 3-9 team ever. But it's heavily relied on the defense to keep them in the games, which the Huskers defense definitely has done. And they just can't move the fucking ball on offense. It's scary. And Nebraska doesn't have a ton of weapons on offense. Let's just get that out the box here. But we really don't. I mean, right, Christian? I mean, we don't have a Trey Palmer at wide receiver or a Stanley Morgan or some of these guys. But we do have some good running backs. But it's very reliant on Sims and the turnovers, the stupid penalties, the inept penalties, and just play calling at times in the last 2 games. Yeah, it's tough. I don't know what to expect. Christian said it best. I mean, this Northern Illinois game, we're 11-point favorites, and I don't really care what the hell the spread is. But if Nebraska even wins by 10 or less, to me, something needs to change. Christian said it best. I'm not calling for Matt Rule's head. I'm not one of those idiots, but it's it's got to be a quarterback change. If you're going to go with Jeff Sims, play him the whole fucking game then and figure it out. And if you can't figure it out by then, that's 3 games. Jeff Sims has played what, Christian? 2-3 years at Georgia Tech. He's played plenty of football. If it's still just as bad or close to that, something needs to change. Whether that's Satterfield. I mean, there's a reason why South Carolina didn't have a problem with him leaving. Or was he fired, Christian? Was he fired or did he walk away?
No, I think so I had to dig deep into this. Satterfield is, prison BFFs with Matt Rule. I mean, just about where he goes. I mean, he was with him at Temple. I think he came back with him at Baylor. I think he even made a short stop. If I remember correctly, I think he might have made a short stop with the Panthers a little bit, and then he ended up in South Carolina for like a year.
Okay. So regardless, though, Christian's right. Something has to change. Something. I mean, the offense is averaging 13 fucking points a game or whatever the hell it is, 12 and a half. This shit, we're not that bad offensively that we should not, we should be able to put more points up. TCU could have dropped 60 on Colorado. We put up 14. I'm going to leave it at that. Like, I'm with you guys.
We'll talk about this right here real quick, and then we'll kind of keep it moving. Florida's defense is top 4 in the country. Well, I guess Utah's defense is top 3 in the country then, right? I mean, because they held Baylor and their backup quarterback to 13 points.
Christian, you got Florida family, friends.
Yeah.
And I know they're not all this crazy, but I will say something about Florida fans. You guys are fucking relentless. I mean, they are, man. You guys will back Your team, I love it for it. I do. I give you props there, man. But Florida's not a top 4 defense in the country. They're not even a top 25, let alone a top 35 team defensively.
It says, look at the NCAA stats, not line. Yeah. So let's just put an asterisk right there with it, right? You played McNeese State, who's an FCS school, and you beat the dog shit out of them. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. Great job. You played Utah that had 8 players, right? And I get it. It's according to the NCAA, but the statement is Florida's defense is top 4 in the country.
Utah had a 4th-string quarterback in there.
Exactly. I'm just saying, right? Air Force is number 1. We all know that, right? I mean, if Air Force is number 1, then let's just go join the Air Force and become airmen, Chris. I mean, Jesus Christ, I should have done that instead of joining the Army. Right?
Gator swag. I expect more out of you than that. Come on.
I want this same energy, by the way. I love it. I need you to come ready to go on a Saturday at 5:40. And let's do it. Let's watch it. Because hey, and I'm going to be honest with you, I will know everything I need to know about Florida this week.
I agree. That's what we're doing in the game. I want you in the game, Gator Swag. I want you in there.
Tennessee is number 29. Well, I can say this about Tennessee. I don't think Virginia is all that good of a team.
No.
Austin, PA, I think they're a surprisingly good team, not a great team, right? But again, just kind of talking about what we're talking about here, I'm not trying to say Austin, PA is some world beater, right? I know Austin, PA, they're a program that they play major programs every year. They play a lot of them. They're a program that's their talk about jumping them up into some of these different conferences and all that, the Power 5 and da-da-da-da-da-da. But like I said, as far as the Tennessee, I don't know enough about Tennessee yet. I don't know enough about Florida yet, right? I think that kind of like Chris said about the dogs earlier on, right? Was Georgia kind of hiding some stuff in those warm-up games they had?
Thank you.
Was Tennessee holding back against Virginia? Were they holding back maybe a little bit against Austin, PA? I don't know. I can tell you this, though. We're going to figure that out on Saturday, dude. I mean, if Florida comes out there, and remember, I didn't outright pick them to win this game. I just said it wouldn't surprise me if Florida figures out a way to win it. I mean, they almost did it last year. But again, I'll make that argument. I thought Anthony Richardson is going to end up being a better quarterback than Graham Mertz is, right? That's my take on it. Chris, you got him as your fantasy quarterback, thanks to me kind of putting a bug in your ear there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I knew a lot about Anthony Richardson. I drafted him because you fucked me over by taking some of my quarterbacks before. But Gator Swag, real quickly, I don't mean to touch on you this entire show, but I got a question for you to prove you wrong. Who's the best defense the last 3 years? 3 years in college football. Who is it? Overall, who's the best defense? Christian knows this answer. It's easy. They all play for the Philadelphia Eagles. Who is it? Throw it in the chat. I know who you're going to say. Do you think right now, if you look up where Georgia's at after 2 weeks, say they're in Christian, what's Georgia's defense rated right now? Probably top 25 somewhere. Probably the back half.
Well,
what are they at? No, this is going to be bringing up a good point.
Here's the problem with like the first 5 weeks of college, the first month of college football. Everybody's tied,
right?
Fortunately,
yards given up a game. I don't even go points per game. Georgia's
right,
probably not top 10. I can guarantee you that.
Let me see. I'm on the side here.
Unfortunately, he says GA. Right.
Yeah.
But my point is, so if Georgia, I don't know, Chris is going to find the stat here real quick. He'll tell me, but where they're at, does that mean that you don't think Georgia's defense is going to be any good? Because you just said Tennessee is number 29 and Florida is some crazy number right now. That's my point. It's like, you really think Georgia's defense isn't going to be good this year? Let's be honest.
Yeah. Really so Georgia's defense, by the way, is sitting right at number 17 for right now. Teams that are ahead of them include Missouri, Indiana, Ohio, Cal, Oregon State, Syracuse, Ohio State, Memphis, Air Force, and Michigan State.
That's my point. what it says now, Gator swag doesn't mean a goddamn thing. We all know Georgia's going to finish in the top 5 this year in yards given up a game. That's what Georgia does. They are what they are under Kirby Smart. That's my point. Don't look at too much into the rankings after 2 weeks is my whole point with this. That's all I'm going to say.
By the way, to the point of Tennessee's defense being ranked 29th, you know who's ranked 28th?
I don't. Huskers.
Is oh shit, this is gonna get real interesting real quick. Number 28 is Texas.
Okay.
269 yards a game to Tennessee's 270. So a yard difference there.
Okay. I got a question for all y'all. Which team leads the country in sacks?
By the way, I agree. I do like Austin Armstrong. I think he's going to do a great job. I tell you this, Florida won't finish ranked 90th this year in defense. I think I've got him pegged like in the top 50 this year as far as defense is where they'll finish, which will be a vast improvement.
Yeah, I put him definitely ahead of 90. I might not go top 50, but I'll put him up. Definitely improved, though. They have to be better. Have to be. Children of the Corn said it best. A team that had 21 sacks last year, which was bottom 10% in the country, is leading the country with 11 and 12 sacks. Isn't that crazy?
But you know who ranks number 27th on that list, Chris, of as far as total defense this year?
What's that?
Who's that? Northern Illinois University.
Oh, can I get a prediction, Christian, on the Northern Illinois? Is that Nebraska game? You picking an upset? Holy shit, you hit this. I will give you your $500 back for free. There it is. Come on. Come on, man. You know you want to do it. I can tell. Give me Northern Illinois 27, Nebraska 26, right? That's what you're going to do to me. I know it.
So you're saying that Nebraska is going to score 26 points?
Look, I'm not saying that. Even if they did, I don't know if I believe it. I honestly, to be honest, that's terrible that I say that about my own team, but that's a stretch, dude. I know we're averaging 13. That would be doubling up what we've done against 2 Power 5 schools, though. Maybe Northern Illinois. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I really want to do this. I really want to pick Northern Illinois to win the game. Not because I'm trying to hate on Nebraska. I'm just thinking about this from the offset. And I'm like, hey, because I know what's going to happen. If I pick them to win, they'll lose. But if I just my hard part of it is Jeff Sims will do this. He'll come out and he'll have a shocking game, right? Where maybe he has 2 games where he looks really good. Then he plays decent against Michigan. You get lulled into this sense of, all right, maybe he doesn't look so bad, right? Maybe we can win with Jeff Sims.
Figured it out.
And then you go out and you play someone like Illinois or whatever have you. And it would just be, and then he just lets you down. I'm going to say this. I think it's going to be a lot closer than what people think it's going to be.
Would you say within 11 points?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I would say within 11 points.
Okay. That's the spread right now, currently.
Gator Swag says, what would be the score of Nebraska versus Georgia if they were playing this weekend? Chris, I'll let you take this one.
Depends on where you're playing. No, actually, it really doesn't fucking matter at all. Give me Georgia. I will say, I know you guys want to laugh about Nebraska, and this is a laughing session about my team. I get it. I understand it. I respect it. I actually think Nebraska's defense would be okay against Georgia, and I don't mean that as that we're winning this game, but we wouldn't move the ball for probably more than 200 yards against Georgia. That game would be something in the realm of like a 38-3 type of game, maybe 42. I don't know if Nebraska could score against Georgia, especially if it's midseason form in any Georgia team I've seen the last 3 years. We don't have a quarterback that can throw. I don't think you can run against Georgia. You'd have to throw it. We don't have the receivers. I mean, that would be a game that I hope is never played, honestly.
I don't know. I really don't know. He said, Gator says, say in Dallas. I would probably say, just to be nice here, I'm kind of losing a little bit of my touch because I've got neck pain right now, dude. I'm questionable to return. Gator Swag says, I would pick Nebraska 27-24. Well, there you go. There you go.
Man, you must got a lot of money, or I hope you're making some on these bold predictions. Holy
He
shit.
said LOL, so that tells me everything I need to know right there, right?
Christian, give me an odd score though. Right now, what you've seen 2 weeks both into this season, what would you really think? I know it doesn't mean shit. It's not going to happen, thank God. But
Just because I'm a Falcons fan, 28-3.
oh God,
Maybe
I can't believe you said this.
Well, here's the thing, right? Because you got to look at it this way, right? I do think Nebraska's defense is better than really anybody Georgia has played this year. Okay, this year.
Oh yeah.
Maybe Nebraska was able to move it down the field. You know, mobile quarterbacks have given them problems in the past. I mean, I guess you'd have to kind of look at it from the standpoint of, well, you know what? I'll tell you what I'll do. How about this? You want a score prediction? I'll give you a score prediction. I will give you a score prediction.
I'll say this while you're thinking about your score prediction. I think Jeff Sims would turn it over so much against that defense of your guys is who, by the way, I think you guys are like top 15 in turnovers right now on defense. You guys got like 4 or 5 interceptions. I just look at that and go, well, God, no matter how good that defense is for us, you guys would get easy points. You know what I mean? That's why I see it being like a 38-10 game or a 38-3. Not that it matters. Like I said, it's all hypothetically speaking. We're never going to play Georgia in the next fucking 5 years unless Georgia like completely shits the bed one of these years and plays for, you know, the toilet bowl.
Hold on one second here. Hold on, sweet chariot.
What, are you running some simulation over there or what?
No, I'm just looking up this right here for you.
K-State at Missouri?
No, hold on one second. Hold on. I got you. I got you with something right here.
You're not going to surprise me, Christian.
Oh, I think I might.
No. There's nothing that you're going to surprise me with. Oh, bringing back the old Jeff Sim days at Georgia Tech. Yeah, that's all I need to see there.
He didn't even play in that game either.
Oh, well, then even better. They probably didn't turn it over as much.
Man, that Auburn game is looking interesting for Georgia.
Yeah.
It's really
On the
interesting.
Road. That's your first road test, by the way.
It's the first road test. You know, thank God that game's not being played in Cal. That would be really, really
God, if I would have pulled that off last week, dude, I would have looked like a god. God, I'm mad about that. You hit the Washington State-Wisconsin game, and then it's like you almost do it on purpose to make me feel like an asshat. And then I do, and it was 14-10, bro.
I told you I really wanted to. I couldn't pick Auburn. I wanted to pick Cal to upset Auburn, right? But I couldn't do it. Guess who the best team in Alabama is? Well, you know, I'll say this. I said this before the year started. I think Auburn's got that ability to shit the bed in some of these games and then pull an upset where they shouldn't. Like, would it really shock me? And they almost did it to Cal. They literally almost did it to Cal, where they about lost to Cal. And, you know, but they'll lose to somebody they shouldn't this year. I know that. I can tell you that right now.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to lose somebody they shouldn't, and then they might turn around and they might beat Bama this year, right? So that's going to be real interesting to see. But, Chris, I think, you know, this brings us to a pretty good spot anyways right here as we touch that hour and a half mark.
Damn.
You know, I'm excited, Chris. Big weekend, big week 3 here coming up for college football. We're going to get back at it. And, Chris, anything to say, obviously, before we get off here?
No. Appreciate you guys joining in. I know we started a little early tonight, but I appreciate you guys coming in, every one of you. Gator swag, even I know I harp on your Florida team all the time. It's okay. That's what makes college football fun. So no pun intended there. We like to talk a lot of shit on this show. We like to hear you guys give it to us as well. So like I said, thanks for the support. If you haven't, guys, please like this video. If you haven't subscribed, I know you guys have, but please do. Just get it out there, man. Help us out a little bit. We'll probably see you, Christian, Saturday, doing a little Tennessee at Florida, baby.
Saturday, 5:40. Be there or be square. We'll catch you guys on Saturday.